Okay, so we're going to talk about the most overlooked blood test when it comes to hair loss. If you're dealing with hair loss, thinning hair, or just a lack of volume, this video is for you. Let's start with the basics. Down here we have a hair follicle. Now, there's a lot of confusion about what a follicle actually is. People think it's the hair itself, but it's not. The follicle is like a little pocket that holds the hair. And here's something interesting. The hair itself isn't alive, but the follicle is. Then we have this tiny thing under the hair root called the dermal papilla. This little guy controls the hair growth stages. There are 3 stages. Growth. This lasts between 2 and 7 years, so your hair has a lifespan of about 2 to 7 years. Transition. The hair starts to loosen up, rest, the hair falls out, and a new one grows in its place. A lot can go wrong with this area. You might have high levels of DHT, a strong form of testosterone, which can damage the follicle or mess with the growth stages, making the hair smaller or stopping it from growing altogether. You can also have calcium buildup around the root, which reduces blood flow. That's why some people try scalp massages or other ways to stimulate blood flow to the scalp. One last thing about the dermal papilla. It not only controls the hair growth stages, but also regulates stem cells. These are super important because they're like blank slate cells that hang out and wait until they're needed. Then, they transform into hair cells. So, what blood test should you get to make sure your hair has the best chance of growing thick and strong? Take a guess. What nutrient deficiency could be a major culprit? If you guessed vitamin D3, you're right. But here's the problem. When you get your blood tested, the doctor usually says, "Oh, your levels are normal, you're fine." Let's unpack some things about vitamin D. First question, are there any vitamin D genes linked to hair or hair loss? One thing you need to know is that vitamin D isn't really a vitamin, it's a hormone. And it's involved in a whopping 10% of our genes. We have something like 25,000 genes, so that means vitamin D is involved with 2,500 different ones. And it just so happens that several of these genes are really important for hair growth, especially down here in the dermal papilla. One of these genes is called beta-catenin. This gene does a lot. It regulates the follicle and the different stages of hair development. It's also essential for moving from one phase to the next. So if you don't have enough vitamin D to trigger that gene, you're not going to have that smooth transition, and your hair won't grow to its full potential. I'll list all the genes in the description below, but I wanted to mention another one just because of its funny name, the Sonic Hedgehog gene. Yep, that's right, Sonic Hedgehog, look it up, it's a real thing. And it's one of the genes that affects hair that's controlled by vitamin D. Second question, are there vitamin D receptors in the hair follicle? Absolutely. There's a high concentration of vitamin D receptors right around this area. So if you don't have enough vitamin D, you're not going to give your hair what it needs to grow. Third question, what about alopecia? Isn't that an autoimmune disease? Yes, it is. And autoimmune diseases are often linked to vitamin D deficiency. Without enough vitamin D, your immune system is more likely to develop autoimmune diseases. That's why one of the most powerful remedies for any autoimmune disease is high levels of vitamin D. It helps reduce inflammation and helps your T cells, important immune cells, tell the difference between your own cells and foreign invaders. See, in an autoimmune disease, your body attacks itself because it can't tell the difference between your cells and something else. Vitamin D helps regulate that whole process. Fourth question, is there any scalp condition linked to vitamin D? The answer is yes. Psoriasis on the scalp or skin can be a sign of severe vitamin D deficiency. Dandruff is also linked, as well as almost every type of dermatitis. The common remedy for all these inflammatory skin conditions is prednisone, which is a steroid that reduces inflammation. Vitamin D is a powerful anti-inflammatory too, but it doesn't come with all the side effects. If you have too much calcium buildup under your scalp around the hair follicle, it's going to block blood flow and oxygen to the hair, and it'll die off, leading to hair loss. But how does this relate to vitamin D? Well, there's another piece to this puzzle, magnesium. Magnesium is the most powerful regulator of calcium. Whether you have calcium building up inside your cells or your mitochondria, magnesium keeps things in check. I might have mentioned vitamin K2 as a calcium regulator in other videos, and that's true. But magnesium is like the co-worker that allows the enzymes for vitamin K2 to do their job. So magnesium is at the root of a lot of calcification problems. Vitamin D is important, but magnesium is essential too. Why? Because magnesium is involved in over 300 different enzymes, and 6 of those relate specifically to hair. If you don't have enough magnesium, your hair can't develop its structure properly. Plus, it takes energy to grow hair, and magnesium is essential for energy production in your body. And get this, there are 3 different points in the process of making vitamin D where magnesium is needed. So you need magnesium for vitamin D to work, and you need magnesium to prevent calcium buildup in the scalp. Fifth question, why not just test for both magnesium and vitamin D? You can't get an accurate measure of magnesium from a blood test. Only 1% of your body's magnesium is in your blood. The rest is in other places, mainly inside your cells. So, a blood test doesn't give you the full picture. Testing magnesium is tricky. Some people might be willing to do a biopsy, which is a good way to test it, but there are other tests that are more difficult and not often ordered by doctors. So, while magnesium is involved in a lot of things, including vitamin D and scalp calcification, and most people are deficient, it's not easy to test. Testing vitamin D. So you go to the doctor and they say, your vitamin D levels are normal, you're good. Let's say it's on the low end, like 20, 30, or even 40. What's not commonly known is that there are 2 vitamin D systems in your body. One system feeds calcium to your bones, but there's another system that has other functions beyond calcium, like keeping your hair healthy and growing. All the vitamin D functions we're talking about work off this other system, which is very different. Think of it this way. You get sun, you eat foods with vitamin D, you take supplements, it goes into your blood, and most of it feeds the calcium in your bones. But a tiny amount, like 0.4%, goes to these other functions: your skin, hair, immune system, gut. So where does that vitamin D come from? It comes from the sun, the vitamin D in your food, or supplements. This is a different type of vitamin D. There are actually 3 different types, and this is where you're getting most of it if you get daily sun, eat the right foods, and take vitamin D supplements daily. The thing about this form of vitamin D is that it only has a 24-hour half-life. This means you need daily doses of sun, food with vitamin D, or supplements. People don't realize this, and that's why vitamin D deficiency is so common worldwide. The average person, depending on where they live, has vitamin D levels less than 20 or 30. That's not enough to make a real difference and feed your hair follicles. And there are so many things that can get in the way. Your genes, skin color, darker skin makes less vitamin D, insulin resistance, diabetes, obesity, air pollution blocking the sun. So, what do you need to do? Make sure your blood test shows vitamin D levels of at least 70 nanograms per milliliter, up to 100 or even more. You need higher amounts to get past all those barriers. I recommend at least 20,000 IU daily. Now you might be thinking, whoa, that's a lot. Isn't that toxic? No, it's not. If you were out in the summer sun for 40 minutes, that's how much vitamin D you'd get. No one says that being out in the sun for 40 minutes is toxic. They might say don't get burned, but the point is, you get a lot of vitamin D from the sun, and it's not toxic. Vitamin D toxicity only happens when you take hundreds of thousands of IUs every single day for months, especially without the other nutrients that help it work. That's why I recommend taking magnesium with it, at least 500 milligrams at night. You also want to take other helpful nutrients like vitamin K2 and zinc. So this information about vitamin D is interesting for hair, but it's even more interesting that you can't really rely on those low normal levels on a blood test. You want to raise those levels higher by taking more vitamin D daily, along with those other nutrients. If you have no hair on your head and you have calcium buildup in your scalp, you might want to take even more magnesium for a while, as that can help regulate the calcium buildup in your soft tissues. Other important nutrients for hair. Now, there are a few more nutrients I want to mention that are important for hair health. Zinc. Zinc controls hair growth and repair. If you're deficient in zinc, you can have dry hair, short hair, or even hair loss. Iron is important for red blood cells, which carry oxygen to your hair follicles. When you get your ferritin levels tested, ferritin is a protein that stores iron. Make sure it's above 70. You might see low iron in women who are menstruating, in which case they might need to eat more red meat, liver, or take liver pills. But you might also see it in men with too much iron. How is that possible? There are some genetic conditions where people accumulate too much iron but are still deficient because it's not being used properly. In that case, you might need to donate blood because too much iron can be toxic. It can also affect your hair because it's locked up, and you also become anemic. B12. You need B12 for red blood cells along with iron. If you're deficient, your hair follicles can't get enough oxygen. Omega-3s. If you're low in omega-3 fatty acids, maybe because you're consuming a lot of seed oils that can also dry out your hair. It's a lot to take in, but I think the most important things are to start taking vitamin D and magnesium. And please comment below if this helps you with any hair problems you're having. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.